Hello, everyone. This is me, Buriana Mumerin, and I'm gonna interviewing today one of the teachers that we gonna have the privilege to have during the first Bulgarian training of somatic experiencing. She's gonna be teaching the third year, the advanced year. And it's a great honor to present to all of you today Lyle Keen. She is an advanced level instructor of somatic experiencing for the SE Trauma Institute and a founding member of the ABT Associação Brasileira do Trauma, the Brazilian SE Association. She has been a rower since 1948 and teaches roving and rove movement for the Rove Institute. Lyle holds a 6th-degree black belt in Aikido and is a teacher of both Aikido and Shinshin Toitsudo, mind and body coordination, certified by the Ki Society International in Tokyo, Japan. She teaches in US and Brazil and around the world for both the Rove Institute and the SE Trauma Institute. She is anthroposophic art therapist and biographical counselor, lives in the Brazil rainforest with her husband and also SE teacher and her daughter. And I also have the privilege to have Lyle Keen as my teacher during the SE professional training in Edinburgh, Scotland. Welcome, welcome, Lyle. It's great to have you. It's a great honor to meet you today. How are you doing and where are you based right now?
I'm doing very well. I am home in Brazil on a chilly winter day. People think it doesn't get chilly in Brazil, but it actually does get a little chilly in the winter. And I'm so happy to meet you, Floriana, and to see your lovely face. And I'm so happy that you have decided to bring this marvelous work to Bulgaria.
And thank you for your support because you were supporting my work bringing SE to Bulgaria. Thank you very much. I have some questions for you today, and let's start from there. What is somatic experiencing, and what scientific and practical principles is it based on?
Okay, so what is somatic experiencing? There's so many answers to that question. Let's start with a brief one. Somatic experiencing is an approach to treating and healing post-traumatic stress that is based in the physiological responses of the body to life-threatening situations. Peter Levine, who is the founder of SE, he created the work off the observation. He's a great studious person, and he studied how wild animals respond to life-threatening situations. And they go into a state of freeze where they faint and they appear to be dead. And then a wild animal will come out of that state of freeze when the life-threatening danger is past and reset to a normal functioning. Now, Dr. Levine noticed that in human beings, the same mechanism happened as happens with the wild animals, except for one fact. We human beings go into freeze, but we don't come out of freeze. And the freeze is a highly activated state where we go, highly activated in terms of the autonomic nervous system. We go into freeze when our whole system has prepared for fight and flight to save our lives, and we are not able to fight or fly. For human beings, this can be a situation like a child in a violent situation. It can be a situation such as a surgery where we are immobilized. It can be a car accident where we are inside of a little tiny tin can held in place by a seatbelt. We human beings have many, many, many situations in our lives, more than wild animals, where we experience extreme life threat and we are unable to resolve it with fight or flight. And so when we are unable to resolve a life-threatening situation with fight or flight, we go to our third and our last card that our organism has to play, which is a state of freeze. And it's a state that looks like we are fainted or asleep or even dead. However, inside, all of our system is full on, it's in full on fight and flight, and then that just got frozen there. And when we do not come out of that response, that is when all the symptoms of trauma are generated. So somatic experiencing is a physiological based approach to treating trauma. And the idea is that we work with the underlying incomplete responses of fight, flight, and freeze. We give the organism time to come out of freeze. We allow the fight and flight responses to come forth and to discharge. And we do that in a setting where we, how shall I say it, we interview the body. We talk to the person, about the incident, and then we notice what happens in their body as they talk about that. And of course, when we have an unresolved trauma and we go to talk about it, the activation, the fear, the readiness to do something, it will start to emerge. Yeah. And then when it does begin to emerge, we stop at that point. We stop the story, we stop the narrative, and we listen to the body's narrative. And the body tells the story in a very different way than the brain. It tells it through sequences of sensation and motor responses, such as trembling, shaking, blinking, crying, waves of heat, sweating, getting cold, eye movements, and many, many more. Yeah. And as the body tells a story through its own language, as it were, what happens is we come out of the freeze, we are able to discharge those highly activated energies of fight and flight and reset to a place where our physiology comes back into a range of normal function and where we are no longer living in a situation where fear is imprinted into our body. We get the fear, the rage, the death threat out of the body and are able to come back to a life-affirming baseline to live in.
You're not already trapped. Yeah.
That's a small description of what somatic experience.
Lovely description. And how does SE differ from other trauma in focused approaches? What makes it different?
Well, I would say that so many of the trauma-focused approaches that are out there in the market nowadays are actually drew much of their inspiration from somatic experience.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, Peter Levine's work is so profound, and it addresses the whole human being. We talk about the physiology of trauma, and that underlies everything. But of course, when we have trauma, we have patterns of fixation in the physiology and fight, flight, freeze responses that get stuck in the system. And that underlies patterns of fixation in emotion and in cognition and belief and symbolic.
Yeah. So, and behavior probably.
Yeah. And behavior, absolutely. Yeah. Peter Levine's work, it touches into the whole being so profoundly, and it has been so profoundly successful in actually treating and resolving post-traumatic stress. And there are many approaches that play off of it and that use pieces of it. I myself have not studied other approaches to treat trauma. And the reason that I have not is because I have not felt a lack in terms of what I have with SE.
Yeah. What specific results can clients experience when SE is applied in therapy?
Well, so many. People come to a trauma therapist because they are experiencing traumatic symptoms, because they feel stuck in their life on some issue. Maybe they want to find a relationship where they feel happy and joyous and met by the other person instead of repeating the same uncomfortable or abusive patterns of previous relationships. Maybe they have nightmares. Maybe they have an illness. One of the ways that the somatic experiencing views complex trauma that has been in the system for a long time is we view syndromes, the many physiological syndromes, we view those as manifestations of that long-term trauma that is held in the system. So people will come, they have migraines, people will become because they have fibromyalgia, because they have irritable bowel syndrome, because they have premenstrual syndrome, because they have epilepsy. So they may come for a physiological or for a physical ailment that is a syndrome. They may come because they have a certain traumatic event in their mind that they want to resolve. Most people come because they have a symptom of some kind that they trace to trauma.
Yes, but usually they don't recognize them as a trauma results in their body, and we educate them around that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so people come, and it's interesting because originally somatic experiencing was conceived of as a short-term short-term therapy for shock trauma.
Yeah.
And it works very well in that context. So somebody may have, for example, a car accident. And since the car accident, they have had pain in their shoulder, they have had nightmares, they have had flashbacks. And if that was a one-time car accident and it happened relatively recently, it may help them to resolve those symptoms in 5 or 6 sessions, sometimes even less.
Yeah.
When the symptom or the issue that the person is experiencing, it is connected to a series of other traumas in the past, it can be a longer treatment. And uh, and like I say, in the beginning, we thought of somatic experiencing as a short-term treatment for shock trauma specifically. And as we have worked with it over time, it has become more and more apparent that it is also an excellent model for treating developmental trauma.
Yeah.
And one of the places that we are really also, one of the edges that we are pushing into and exploring is how does somatic experiencing treat collective trauma and transgenerational trauma?
Yeah.
And this is one of the newer places. But we live in a world where there is so much collective trauma right now that it's really important to begin to look at how these excellent skills that we have with somatic experiencing can address that collective trauma as well.
It's wonderful. It's very needed. Can you share a specific case or story from your practice where SE made a significant difference for your client?
Absolutely. Well, the thing, of course, is to think of which one. Uh, I've worked with a number of people who have long, complex trauma histories. And for them, so often the result is just that they begin to feel more present in their life. They can feel their body, they can feel their body again, they can listen to their body, they can connect with their gut, with their intuition. They can connect again with their creativity, and they can connect with their joy. So, those are like broad things. Oftentimes people come because they have a phobia of some kind, or because they've had a series of car accidents and they have difficulty orienting now. So that as somatic experiencing can do enormous things to help resolving that, to helping to resolve panic attacks. Yeah, it's just migraines is wonderful for migraines. It really helps people with migraines. Many clients come to Essie with migraines and then they stop having migraines. And
Yeah.
other people who have very, very intense and deeply rooted migraines, I count myself among this category. I had terrible migraines once or twice, almost all of my adult, well, since the time I was a teenager. And now I still have a migraine every now and again, but I have all the tools that I
Yeah.
need to shift it. And when I feel it coming on so very often, I can change the way that I am being present in my body and my world and not have a migraine. So
It's like a signal for you to
yes,
check with yourself if you're connected.
yes.
Probably it's good to say that actually one of the definitions that we work in somatic experiencing about trauma is disconnection from the body, from others, and from life, from the living world around us. So healing is the opposite, to connect to the body and the signals that we receive from it all the time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, it's we working with resourcing actually, and this is main thing in somatic experiencing. What is the role of resources and resourcing presence in SE, and why it is so important to begin there?
Well, trauma is something that we experienced as too big for us, for too big to deal with, too
Yeah.
much, too fast, too soon, too much. And my coping mechanisms were not enough. My active coping mechanisms were not enough for me to deal with that. So my experience when I've been traumatized is one of overwhelm and powerlessness. And so, however, this is so important to underline is that if I passed through a traumatic situation and I lived, my resources, my capabilities for survival were greater than the trauma. So, somebody who comes to get their trauma treated with somatic experiencing or any other method is somebody who has more life force, more survival skills than the size of the trauma that they experienced because they're alive. If they didn't, they'd be dead. They wouldn't be seeking, they would be on to the next adventure and they would not be seeking treatment. So when we start by working, we start by working with what are that person's deep life affirming resources. How was it that they survived? And the tricky thing, of course, is as you just said, Boriana, when we go into a freeze response, we disconnect, we dissociate, we don't feel. And so our definition of unresolved trauma is an incomplete freeze response. The person went into freeze and they did not come out, which means there's always a level of dissociation with that. And one of the things that we dissociate from is our strength, our wholeness, our aliveness, our capacity for survival. However, that capacity for survival is online and working because we're still alive. So we start with that and we work to bring back into the person's awareness of themselves and very, very specifically into their bodily sensations. That sense of goodness, that sense of aliveness, the strength that they have, whatever it was that they have that helped them to survive. Sometimes what helped them to survive was good luck. And having good luck is not a resource to be ignored. Having good luck is a really important resource. So sometimes it was actually my strength. Sometimes it was my capacity to endure. Sometimes it was the fact that I froze. I knew how to leave. There's so many ways that we go to survive trauma. And as we bring our awareness of them back home, and as we begin to experience that in our body, we begin to consciously connect with the strength in ourselves that we need to renegotiate the traumatic happening.
Lovely. So important to connect with our own resources.
Is
Yeah. How do clients typically respond when they begin connecting with their body sensations? Are there common challenges or surprises for them?
there are oftentimes surprises, and it very much depends on the client. Some people are already in touch with their bodily sensations. Oftentimes people who've worked with the body a lot, sometimes just a normal person, but they're there, they can feel their body. And sometimes one of the big challenges is that we as human beings in a civilized world, we have been acculturated to ignore our bodily sensations, to downplay them, and to not listen to them.
Yeah.
The entire not the entire pharmaceutical industry, but it's such a big, you have a headache. Don't wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that you were gaming on the computer till 3 a.m. last night, staring at the screen like that. No, don't wonder that. Just take a pill and make they go away. Do you have heartburn? Don't think about that huge greasy pizza you ate last night. Take a pill and the heartburn will go away. So we're taught to not listen. We're taught to not listen. We're taught to medicate symptoms down. And so it can be, learning to hear our body, learning to value and listen to the signs of our body. For some people, it's like learning a whole new language.
Yeah,
People already know that language, but for some people, it's a whole new language, and they have to understand why we want them to do that. They have to understand how deeply connected their capacity for healing is with their capacity to feel themselves.
Yeah. And also, when we are disconnected from the body, we are disconnected from our needs and what's good for us, what's not good for us. Yeah, as you said just a moment ago.
Absolutely. And so often that disconnection from our needs, it disconnects us from the remedial action that we could take to meet those needs and not need to experience the pain or the symptom.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can you tell us about what does a real SE session looks like in practice? What are the first steps a therapist typically takes?
Okay. So depending, the first steps are usually greeting the client, coming in, talking a little bit about how the client has been since the last session, and then deciding together what our focus for this particular session is. Then, depending on whether we are doing a seated and more verbal session or whether we are doing a touch session, we will proceed accordingly. With the seated and verbal session, we will start by I personally and many SE therapists start with resource. Others go straight into the issue. But we will start. We start with resourcing. So we decide the issue that we want to work with. We will work with a related resource. We will really bring that into the body until there is a sense of ease and comfort experienced at the physical level, at the sensation level. And from there, we begin to address the challenging material that the client wants to work with. And it's really important to stress that in somatic experiencing, we are always working with a small enough piece of the challenging material that it can be digested. We call this titration. And that's very important because trauma by nature is something that was too much, too soon, too fast, something that overwhelmed our capacities to deal with a situation. And so when we go to renegotiate trauma, we need to break down the challenge into pieces that the system can actually digest and absorb. And that is how we actually process the trauma in our system and are able to move back into a state of life. Let's call it life.
Yeah.
Now, when we are doing a touch session, we'll start the same way. We'll start by conversing, and then then the person lies down on the table, and we will go and touch. And through the touch, we contact the same registers, the same patterns of experience in the autonomic nervous system. But when we work with touch, we are listening to that through touch, and we are conversing with the client so that they can relate their experience. And so through the touch and through the body's sensations, still we are processing that which was undigested. And just to say too that we think of somatic experience and we talk a lot about working with sensation, and we talk a lot about working with the physiology, but trauma touches all the levels of the being. And as we work with the physiology, we will find that there are many levels of emotion, of meaning that begin to fall into place, ahas that happen.
Yeah.
And very often too, with trauma, there is a spiritual experience, a profound spiritual experience that may or may not be remembered. Often there's a profound spiritual experience that has been masked or is not available to memory because of the traumatic freeze. So the somatic experiencing, we work with the physiology, and through the physiology, we reach all those other levels of the being.
Yeah. And probably that's why it's not enough just to read about somatic experiencing, but to experience it.
That's why
Truly
it's called somatic
experience it
experiencing.
in the present moment.
That's right.
Yeah. Where does SE stands on the global therapeutic landscape? What's happening with the method internationally in terms of trend, recognition, and research?
Well, very good question. Somatic experiencing is expanding rapidly throughout the world. I don't know how many countries we are in now, but we are on all the major continents.
More than 50, I believe.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And our communities in each place are also growing very rapidly. I have had the immense pleasure of teaching the first training, either by myself or with other teachers in a number of different new countries. And then over the years to watch how one training happens and then another one, and how the community grows and how the people in the community grow. It's one of the great joys, I think, for me in what I do, is to watch how one training seeds the growth of a whole community.
Hopefully for Bulgaria as well. You're
Oh,
gonna be teaching at the first SE training in Bulgaria as well.
I have no doubt.
Yeah. I would like to ask you some questions about the training, the upcoming training in Bulgaria. What can you say about the main stages, structure, and overall duration of the SE professional training?
Okay, the SE professional training is a 3-year training. It includes 12 training days per year. They are split into 2 6-day modules per year, which are held at 6-month intervals, more or less. And the 3 years really work with different levels of the work with trauma. So the first year is all about the building blocks. What are the basic building blocks of working with trauma through the somatic experiencing lens. And then in the second year of the training, we take those basic building blocks and we apply them as we work with categories of trauma. And there are many, many categories of trauma. the system will respond very differently to a surgery than to an assault, to a drowning as compared to a car accident, to childhood abuse as compared to a suffocation or an electrocution. So there are each category, let's call it the events that surround the trauma, they have certain things in common. And so we will work a day in the second year, we work each day with a different kind of trauma. And what are the hallmarks that you may expect to find in the renegotiation of that? Where are the pitfalls? Where are the resources? And what does it look like as a general rule? So that's the second year. In the third year, that's when we really begin to work with the tools for treating complex trauma. So we work with we take those basic tools that we learned in the first year and practiced in the second year, and we begin to finely hone them to deal with it requires incredible subtlety and incredible nuance to be able to penetrate into those deep layers of complex trauma without decompensating the person. And so we take those basic skills and then we begin to practice them in the context of how do we deepen into the places where the old complex early trauma is held. We have a special map or model that we use for understanding and working with this, which we introduce. We introduce it in the second year, but we begin to really use it in the third year. And we also work with syndromes. Syndromes, once again, as I said earlier, syndromes being the way that long-term and complex trauma can manifest in the body with these terrible syndromes, which really can make your life hell. And these syndromes, what we have found is they respond very nicely to somatic experiencing, because the somatic experiencing, once again, it winds in there into the deepest places where that trauma is held, and very gently begins to dislodge it and allow it to be processed and completed and integrated. In the last half of the third year, that is when we introduce the work with touch. That's a very special module of the training in and of itself, because it teaches us how to listen to and work with everything that we've been working with and listening to all along, but using our hands really to listen instead of our ears so much. Although there's still conversation that happens, but how do our hands learn to pick up those incredible subtle shifts of the autonomic nervous system? It's very palpable once you learn. It can take a while. So that's the training. It's layered, and the first year is pretty simple and working with the basic somatic experiencing building blocks and concepts. The second year is the categories of trauma, and the third year is really complex trauma, syndromes, touch, and we also work with the eyes in the third year in a very different way than other modalities might, but we work with the eyes as well.
And you're really good in the touch work.
Oh, thank
you. How does the ESI training impact the practitioners themselves in terms of therapeutic maturity, personal transformation, and professional growth as well?
Oh, well, that question for me gets to the heart of why I love to teach somatic experiencing so much, because I love to watch the transformation that happens in the participants over the course of the 3 years. I'll start by saying that most people who want to help other people heal trauma want to help other people heal trauma because they have been traumatized. So, so we work in the training. We have the structure of our day in the training. I'm going to just diverge a little because I know this is one of our future questions, so I'll address it now. Then it fits in here. The structure of our day has a very clear flow to it. We'll start with question and answers. We'll start with some embodiment exercises. Then we move on into a lecture where we will explore in a didactic fashion the topic of the day. Then I, the teacher, do a demonstration, which hopefully demonstrates some of the specific didactic tools that we spoke about in the lecture. And then in the afternoon, the students will do a practice session, which may be a session itself. And maybe in the beginning year, it's more exercises and sessions and whole sessions. In the second year, we already start moving into doing sessions. And in the third year, they're even more like sessions. So there will be a practice in the afternoon, and the participants practice with each other. Now, the goal here in an SE training is to learn to be a practitioner who can help others to heal trauma. However, if you have not healed your own trauma, you don't have an edge on helping other people to do it. Yeah. When I say healed your own trauma, that of course is not like something that just happens and it's done. Healing your own trauma is oftentimes really a lifetime of exploration and growing and exploring and opening new layers and finding another turn on the spiral, maybe a more subtle turn of the same thing that appears again, but in a different way. So healing trauma is a lifetime journey. However, the lifetime journey, the further you go on it, the less miserable it is and the more of an exciting adventure it becomes. We start because we're so wretched, we just don't know how we can go on living. And then as we go on, we still face the same challenges, but as they get more and more subtle because we work with the grosser manifestations, it becomes more and more of a self-knowledge. It becomes more and more of an adventure and a discovery and research. Research is me search. So in the participants, I get to watch them going from their own unresolved trauma, which often holds them very tightly in its grip, to more and more healed, more and more adventurous, more and more hopeful. Everybody becomes more beautiful over the 3 years of SE training because the layers of trauma get resolved and fall away, and we begin to see more and more who's really there. So the personal changes are profound. That is not the reason, that somebody goes into a somatic experiencing training. They go to learn professional skills. But since they practice the professional skills, and since there are personal sessions that are required for certification, what happens is that the participants experience their own transformation. And this is really one of their greatest tools to help others heal, is their own healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And what surprises participants most during the training? Something they didn't expect, but was deeply moving or transformative for them?
I will put it in the words of a psychiatrist who came to one of my training that myself and my husband, who's also an SE teacher that we taught, I won't say there, but he in the third year, a whole group of us went out for drink on the day off, and he said to me, I came to you. He's a psychiatrist. He said, I came to you to steal your techniques. And what happened was I got healed instead. What happened was I got healed. He said, and I want to send my wife to the next training. It was so beautiful. So I think that very often, I think that is what surprises participants most, is they come for technique.
Mm.
And in his case, he came to steal he was very clear, I can steal your techniques, but what happened was I got healed. And I think that
Absolutely.
the level of healing and also the incredible scope of the work of somatic experiencing, because it addresses the human being at all levels of the human being. It addresses us in
Yeah.
our physical body, it addresses us in our emotional, it addresses our cognitive function, and it addresses our spiritual function, because
Yeah.
trauma is a spiritual crisis. How,
Yeah.
if God exists, how could God allow that to happen to me?
Mm.
As the trauma gets renegotiated, and very often, as I said, there was a profoundly beautiful spiritual experience that happened in the trauma that the person has no memory, because the dissociation of that traumatic freeze, it hides the memory. And as they come out of the traumatic freeze,
Mm.
begin to process the energies that were held there, all of a sudden they remember. And
Yeah.
they remember, this is something else that can really surprise people. It surprises clients, it surprises
Yeah.
students. What are the spiritual levels that get touched, that get healed, that get opened as we do this work, which has its basis in the physiology, in the body, in
Yeah.
the autonomic nervous system.
And also the environment during the training is very special. And I may say from my personal experience, and my colleagues, of course, that some of us felt seen for first time during this training, which is profound and very healing experience. Um, you shared some examples of your experience, but can you say something in particular? What transformations have you witnessed in your trainees, not only as therapists, but as human beings? You
Well,
mentioned one of your students, but if you may give us another
one
story.
I see is people become more beautiful. I
Yeah.
see people come in and they're oftentimes frightened, and they go out less frightened. I see people come in thinking of their client. I mean, the way that we conceive of our clients, I see that change in a somatic experiencing training, because because we are really looking at this beautiful, incredible, adaptive nervous system, body, being, which has twisted itself in all these ways to continue to adapt and survive. And so the whole idea of, well, I have a resistant client, that is a complete non sequitur in somatic experiencing. There's no such thing as a resistant client. There is such a thing as a client who doesn't feel safe enough to go there yet. And learning how do we help that person find the safety. So it and that completely changes when the person comes to you and they come to tell you everything that is wrong with them, and
Mm.
you ask them to tell you what is right with them. There's a
Yeah,
whole
absolutely.
shift in the person's perception of themselves. And of course, we as therapists, for us to do this, we have to learn it first in ourselves. So we connect in the somatic experiencing training, we connect with our resources. Our relationship with our clients changes. Our understanding of our primary practice modality, whichever one that we use, that we have been doing, that brought us to the somatic experiencing training, that transforms. And there's a lot of healing that happens. There is healing of emotional issues. There is healing of physical issues.
Mm.
The healing of that which ails you is one of the side effects for the practitioners of doing the somatic experiencing training. Was that specific enough? for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. As I said before, the environment at the training is very, very special. What is the support that the participants receive from the teacher, from the assisting team during the training? What makes that environment so special?
Well, somatic experiencing trainings are done with a very large teaching team of assistants.
Yeah,
And the assistants, with the exception of the lead assistant, are volunteers. They are volunteering their time, and they're volunteering their time for a number of reasons. But most of them want to give back because of what they received in their own training from the assistants. So I mentioned that in the afternoon, the students work together. They will work together usually in groups of 3, sometimes groups of 4, and each little group has an assistant with it. So there's a
yeah.
very personalized attention that is given there to the students' process. And they have someone there to coach them, to answer questions, to help them reflect. Um, so the teaching team is very, very present. They are the ones that are doing that one-on-one coaching in the afternoon practice sessions. The teaching team is also there are the assistants, they are all somatic experiencing practitioners, and some of them are practitioners who are qualified to give the personal sessions that each student needs to count towards certification. All right. But all of the assistants are there, and they do a lot of personal sessions with the students because, of course, what happens in the course of the training is very often people's unresolved trauma will surface.
Mm.
And and the practice sessions are not meant to be sessions where you go deep into the heart of all the unresolved trauma. They're meant to be practice sessions to begin to master the skills and the building blocks of
Mm.
SE. So the assistants are also there offering personal sessions so that the participants can work with things that come up that are too big for the container of the classroom, and also so that they can experience somatic experiencing. They can experience the profound effects of it in their own system so they know what it is that they are offering to people.
Mm.
And yes, so that there's this large teaching team that really holds the training, and of course the teacher is also holding the training. I mean, I can speak for
Absolutely.
myself as a teacher. I really, for myself, I like to know each participant by name. I love to hear their stories as we go through the training and hear what changes and what emerges for them, and to yes, and to help out in whatever way I can. In the afternoons I will sometimes sit with a small group, or I will watch the overall, or sometimes I
Mm.
just sit there in the classroom and people come by, and if they have something to talk to me about, they do. So a lot of those,
Mm.
yeah. But the whole organization, the organizer, the teaching team, the teacher, we have this very wide we have a very wide embrace for the students to try
Mm.
and support them in their process and in their learning.
In supportive way, not judging, not rejecting. This is very important, and I have experienced it. May I ask you one personal question?
You may.
If you could go back to yourself before discovering SE, what would you tell that earlier version of you?
I would tell them that there's hope.
There is hope. Yes.
Yes,
This is one of the main messages, actually, that somatic experiencing brings, that there is hope
yes.
for transformation. And as we go to a close of our today's meeting and interview, would you like to say something to the people who are going to join us in the training? Do you want to send them a message or to say something to them?
Yes, of course. I think that you are in wonderful hands with the organizers of the Hungarian training. It's a very exciting moment to be part of the first group, because then you become part of the cutting edge of somatic experiencing in that country. So it's very exciting, and that the training is an adventure. It is an adventure that will take you to the depths and the heights of human experience, to the depths and the heights of trauma and healing, and ultimately to a place where you can connect with more goodness and wholeness and aliveness than you had before you were traumatized. That's what somatic experiencing does. And I look very much forward to meeting you all in the third year of your training.
It would be great honor for us to have you here, Lyle. And thank you for today's interview.